Okay. Welcome to the BCFS Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Bolts, and it's my co-host, Daniel Winters. Sadly, we have no guests today. Everyone's kind of on location, so we're all kind of busy, right before the New Year's. Kind of happens. Oh, well.
Trying to get everything wrapped up before the end of the year.
Yeah, no kidding.
We're kind of running out of time.
Yeah, no, kind of hard.
Just a couple hours left of the work day, and it's done for the year.
Yeah. Well, today's topics are, as we mentioned last week, email security, and we'll top it off with KnowBe4 at the end. But anyways, so how did we get this all started, Daniel? Like email security?
Well, what we found out is that, especially in the phishing arena, that you're looking at 30% of users who are clicking on malicious emails and clicking on links and providing credentials, and that's just a huge risk for companies.
Oh yeah.
You
lose millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We decided that we needed to take a step back and look at what phishing was, how do we combat it, what do we need to do to get there? Because we had put in a bunch of different systems in place to try to stop malicious email.
Right.
I think I was mentioning we block like 90-something% of all email that comes into our organization, I was talked about last week.
Yeah.
And what we were finding is that phishing was still prevalent. And basically, what phishing is that you've got a bad actor who generates a very legitimate looking email from a bank, a social media site, tons of different options, healthcare. What they're trying to do is to reach out to you and create a kind of an ultimatum, a scare tactic, to get you to click the link, respond to the email, provide them some form of credentialing or their some identifying information about yourself that they can use to further attack you and exploit you.
Right.
And they look very real.
Yeah.
They use the branding from different companies. They use spoofed-looking domains from different companies. Send that email to you and get you to click on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's company after company after company that has lost enormous amounts of money, like we were just talking about,
Right.
to these kinds of attacks. Notably, the toy manufacturer Mattel.
Right.
They had lost $3 million after they had one of their employees got told by a top-level executive in email, that top-level executive sent them that, saying, hey, wire this money to this account in China. We owe them this money. We're starting this partnership with them, whatever have you. So they sent this money through this wire transfer to a bank account in China. Fortunately for them, their employee brushed shoulders with somebody else and was talking about it. And they said, no, I didn't send that. And they were able to go and recollect the funds and didn't lose anything.
Yeah.
They were very, very fortunate.
Yeah.
The city of El Paso was doing a project with some streetcars, and one of the employees for the city received an email from what appeared to be a legitimate vendor, knowing that they had this project going, and they ended up making 2 payments to this vendor in the sum of like $3.5 million, $3.1 million.
If I recall, you said they only made, half back?
Yeah, they ended up only getting half of that back.
Yeah.
So $1.5 million lost, all because of somebody getting tricked with these
Right.
phishing emails. And those are some extreme cases. There's bigger and worse cases, and there's not as bad of cases.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the predominant attack vector that bad actors are using to get information. When you hear about all of these data breaches, this is the predominant way that happens. So it's not always financial directly. It's intangibly financial in customer data.
Yep.
So that's bad reputation, and
Yeah.
you lose it a lot.
And that's mostly due to, human error and everything. And
It's just missing the signs.
yeah,
There's signs all around us in those emails that
Yeah.
show you that it's not a legitimate email, but you have to pay attention.
correct. And some of those signs can be like, if you look at an email, it could be in your from, it could be your subject, it could be who was to, or for whenever the date was sent also.
Mm-hmm.
And hyperlinks should be like one of the obvious things to some people sometimes, but it's not always, because it just looks like a normal link, but
Well, you can make it say anything you want.
correct.
You can make it say
Sign in.
abc.com,
Right.
But in reality, it's abd.com is where it's actually sending you.
Correct.
But if you were to just look at the text, it's ABC.
Yeah. And some are clever enough for a hyperlink if you hover over it. Like, if some of us know what a hyperlink does, if you hover over it, it'll say where it's going and everything.
Right.
But some can cleverly put, like, LinkedIn.com, but then it will redirect to some pseudo site that will look like LinkedIn. And then once you punch in all that information, they already have your information.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's actually a good example of, and they're used in phishing campaigns, but man-in-the-middle attacks.
Right.
That's kind of what they do. Man-in-the-middle, and then DNS-based or host file injection attacks, which, I mean, are pretty complicated type attacks. But basically, it's redirecting web URLs. They can do that.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have to be careful about that. And all of that stuff is built into these phishing emails.
Yeah.
They pull the logos.
Yeah. And like you said, the logo, the content of your own email and everything, that's a big thing you can look at too. Like, we had a user this morning that asked about this email that they did not understand. So I went over to their desk and looked at it. And if you looked at the content of it, there was the reply from, so-and-so. And if you looked underneath, there was a reply from her email address saying that she did all this stuff and that, she had to pay up for it. And I was like, that looks like a, phish attempt and everything. So you can either delete it or hit our lovely phish alert button from KnowBe4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the big characteristics of a phishing attempt is like what you were saying. It was, hey, you did this. You need to pay this invoice, or you need to send us this money, or you need to do this immediately, or this negative consequence is going to happen. And that's exactly what she experienced. Hey, you contacted us for help, even though she didn't, but you contacted us for help. Now you owe us a bill, and you need to pay us this bill, and you need to pay this bill immediately.
Yeah.
And so she was very right in coming and asking, this doesn't look right.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, that's 30% of users without the training are clicking on those links, are providing them with information that's allowing them to get into the organization.
Right. One of the other unusual signs is actually looking at the date of when the email was sent, because is it during normal business hours and everything that you get it? Or is it like, 1 in the morning? Like, who else is going to be up doing that?
Right. Well, and in the United States, a lot of the attacks come from Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
That's a big discrepancy in time. So while they're up and it's their daytime, a lot of us are sleeping.
Correct.
So if you get an email while you're sleeping from somebody who should also probably be sleeping, it's probably not a legitimate email. And it never hurts to pick up the phone, make the phone call. Don't use the number in the email. Don't reply to the email. Actually, use the number out of your contact list.
Correct.
Type in that email address based on what you know it should be or what's in your address book in order to contact and reach out to them.
Yeah.
So, and verify its authenticity.
You do prove a good point there. Like, don't contact the email in, the email itself. We did have a user that actually had that issue during this year, and they did lose control of their online banking account. But, other than where their transactions moved from their savings and their check-ins account and everything, what had happened was they had gotten this email, and in it said that their account was compromised and everything. Their, I think it was their online bank account. And so they called this number, and the guy on the other side said, oh yeah, we just need to, remote into your computer and fix all your stuff and everything. But they weren't able to grab anything really important other than the password because they didn't know how to, use our stuff. So they just moved stuff around.
Trying to find a way to get the money out.
Correct.
Fortunately, they didn't, but...
But, yeah. If you know the person's number that you need to contact them. If the number looks off, don't do it. And obviously, one of the other things is, like, looking at who it's from and everything. Sometimes the email will look fine. It may say, like, Seabolds at whatever, but you got to look at the domain and everything. The domain may look off because, like, we're BancCentral, but we're not BancCentral with a K. It's with 2 C's, so can't be fooled by that.
But if you were to quickly look at it with a K, you wouldn't notice anything's wrong.
Correct.
So it's definitely important to look at who it's from. It's definitely important to look at where, the links in the body are.
Yeah.
It's important to look at what time. It's also important to even look at who it's addressed to.
Right.
If you've got information that's going out, an email from somebody, does it go, are the people in the toolbox people you would expect to receive that kind of an email? Because a lot of times what you'll see is they'll grab blocks of email addresses or employees, the records that they find, and maybe everybody whose last name starts with a K gets the email today.
Right.
Well, not everybody whose last name starts with a K probably gets that type of email. So, if you've got a situation like that, it's probably not a legitimate email.
Yeah. And then one of the other big things is attachments.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Attachments are probably one of the most dangerous things you can add to an email because it just opens up the door for so many other things.
Yeah, you can hide so much in it too.
Mm-hmm. The only, what we tell people is the only safe document ever, that's always safe to open is a text file, a .txt file.
Right.
Because so much other stuff could get embedded in other documents. A big one that is used is an invoice. You get an Excel spreadsheet or something like that that's supposed to be an invoice that you're supposed to pay. Well, in an Excel spreadsheet, you can embed code inside of that as soon as you open it up is executing in the background and you have no idea that it's happening.
Right.
Where you've opened it up, you look at it, go, oh, that invoice isn't for us. This is obviously not mine. You close it, you delete the email, and you go on and you think everything is fine. Well, at that point, it's already too late. You've introduced some form of malware into the system, whether that be a Trojan, a keylogger, the DNS host injection that I was talking about earlier. Lots of different types of malware that you can get on there. You don't realize it's happened until it's too late. Mm-hmm. And at that point, a keylogger is where they're gathering your username and password based on what you're typing into the keyboard. You don't see that happening. You don't see that being transmitted. And then a Trojan is just a back door into your system.
Yeah.
To be able to get into it. So there's those kinds of attacks that are very prevalent in attachments.
Yeah. Most attachments, if you expect them to arrive from someone you know, then they're relatively safe. But there are some attachments, if you get an email from some other bank or business that you don't deal business with, then don't open it. Unless that business suddenly calls you out of nowhere. But, still, you've got to be wary of what you are clicking. I think one of the most clever attachments I've seen, because, where we work and everything, we get a bunch of PDF documents. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of our employees send it to us just to scan and everything. But sometimes you have to check that stuff, too. We have one PDF document, I recall, where there was actually a hyperlink located in the document that led to a site that was actually, clearly a phishing attempt.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened, maybe a year and a half ago, I think.
Well, and that kind of attack is actually utilized to circumvent spam filters and other physical technology that you have to get at your user by going kind of skirting around the defenses, because it's more difficult to look into a file that's attached to an email than it is to actually look at the body of the email.
Right.
So it is a very clever way to get around it, and it's easy to be overlooked with technology. We were talking that they use all of these different methods and they get into your system. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of times it doesn't just stop there.
Correct.
It does. They can be in your system for on your network and monitoring what you're doing for months or weeks before they actually then do what's called spear phishing.
Right.
And so for those months and weeks that they're actually in your system, what they're doing is they're monitoring who you're emailing, what you're talking about, what your role in the company is, who are the other people in the company, and what are their names, what are their roles, what do they do. And they do all of this by monitoring files that are sent, emails that are sent, traffic on the network, because at this point they've gotten in. Once you've got that first blasted phish attempt out that someone's responded to, then they start watching it and they do what's called spear phishing. Mm-hmm. So the difference between a regular phishing attempt and a spear phishing attempt is that the spear phishing attempt is highly targeted. And it is actually the most successful and the most prevalent type of phishing. Yeah. Because of, once they get that information, they can sit and target everybody in the company very precisely. Mm-hmm. And so they get in, they find out, okay, well, who's responsible for the financial transactions of the company?
Right.
And, okay, so it's John Doe over here. Okay. Oh, John Doe's boss is Mr. CEO over here. So I'm going to figure it out, and I figured out what Mr. CEO's name is, and so, hey, John Doe, you need to wire this money to this account. It's the same, very similar situation of what happened to Mattel. You need to wire this money to this account to pay for this new vendor that we're starting to do business with. They need the money as soon as possible. We're going to lose this contract. Please, please make it happen before end of day today.
Right.
Signed, Mr. CEO. Well, that looks right. I know who that is. That email looks right. Because I might miss that little difference. So that looks right. Something I handle. That's the person who would tell me to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and go and do that.
Yeah.
And then it happens. So that's why, when they blow out those phishing attempts, they these emails to try to get this information. The primary things they're trying to get into, bank accounts, email accounts, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Once they get into those, they have access to a lot of information that they can use to make highly targeted attacks.
Yeah. And that's where, well, our partnership, KnowBe4 comes in and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I know prior to when all of that started and everything, we did have a spear phishing campaign, actually. It was from our previous network admin. And it was sent to generally, I think, everyone in the branch. And he was just telling everyone to do, something very, like something he would send, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And it had a link and everything on there and said, click this, fill out the stuff, and we're like, okay, it's, from him. But if you looked at the email address and everything, it said from him at BancCentral, and then it just went off into, crazy town on the address. And I was like,
BancCentral, abcjky.com.
Yeah. Like, well, that was clearly right till it went off the trail. So I just deleted it. But I do recall hearing my coworkers across the cubes just been like, hey, so-and-so sent this email. I was like, yeah, I noticed it. And I clicked on it, and it didn't go anywhere. I'm like, that's not good. So, while I wasn't supposed to keep it to myself, I did mention after another one said something, I was like, I don't think you're supposed to be clicking on those. And they were like, yeah, we realize that. And I was like, well, at least they know. But still, if that was a real attack and everything, that would have been bad.
Well, in a lot of cases, users don't feel comfortable reporting that they've made that mistake.
Correct.
And that's a big issue.
Yeah.
Because, Mattel's, that situation with Mattel, where he went and was having a conversation about this supposed deal, that saved their skin.
Yeah.
So it's really important to...
And that was just off chance right there, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
But it's really important to have a rapport with your users that, in the event that you do make this mistake and this does happen, you go, oh no, I just did something I shouldn't have after the fact. You've got to create a culture where it's really open to, come and tell me you made that mistake. Let me know that mistake was made.
Yeah.
So that and how are we going to respond to that? What are the steps to fix the issue? And you can't go after the employee for it, because if you do that, nobody wants to come and report them.
Yeah.
And timing is of clear essence in that.
Yeah.
In both situations, both with the city of El Paso and Mattel, it was very important for them that they get back to it really quickly.
Could you imagine if that coworker had not talked to that person? Or to like us in general. We get calls every day from our coworkers. Hey, we got this email. Can you scan it and stuff? And it's like, if you keep it to yourself, do you realize what harm you can cause sometimes?
Mm-hmm. Only 4% of funds are ever retrieved.
Yeah.
Both of the stories we talked about, they got all or 50% of it back. But in the reality of all of the money that is compromised in this, only 4% is ever retrieved.
Yeah. And that's all based on just human error there. And
a lot of cases, yeah.
Yeah.
There's no amount of technology to solve this problem.
Correct.
There's really not.
And it's unfortunate, but people, they learn after time.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how rough it gets and everything, but they do learn. And
and it's important that they understand. I mentioned earlier we were talking about Mr. CEO, and Mr. CEO is the one that called for the wire.
Right.
But it's not just it's a type of fraud called CEO fraud, or what the FBI calls business email compromise. It's really important that people also understand that it's not just the CEO that's affected. People impersonate, like you were talking about. You just mentioned our previous network admin.
Yeah.
IT is a big area that's attacked. HR is a big area that's attacked.
Yeah.
Finance and accounting are big areas that are attacked. Plus all of your C-suite executives, they're largely attacked. But it all starts with getting their foot in the door.
Correct.
And that can be with any user.
Yeah.
Any user can provide the right information.
Yeah. And those attacks, they do make, well, they make sense when another user gets it, like when you said CO fraud and all that, and how I mentioned it's from our network admin. I mean, if I get an email from you and it's not actually you, and if I didn't know all the signs and everything, I'd be like, oh, well, Daniel needs this done. Okay, so I do it.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I get it from our boss, and it's like, whatever. I mean, they said it. Might as well do it.
It's common. You do what you do what your boss tells you to do, typically,
Right.
Or those people in authority of an area that you trust. You do what they ask you to do, and you usually do it unquestioningly because that's how we're just brought up. That when this person in authority tells me to do it, I do it.
Correct.
That's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
But in reality, when it comes through a channel that's not a face-to-face communication, you should always question it.
Yeah.
You never know when it's not legitimately them on the other end.
Mm-hmm. And I do know, I'm pretty sure when that campaign was running everything, I actually think I went over to the network admin and I did ask him, I was like, hey, did you send this email? And if I recall, he just like turned around and smiled at me. He's like, don't worry about it. I'm like, okay. And I just went to my desk, left it alone. So I knew he was up to something that day, and that's kind of where our whole KnowBe4 thing just, started off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all about trying to bring that percentage down.
Yeah.
Trying to get from 30% people clicking and opening these links or responding to these emails or opening those attachments to see how low we could get that down.
Mm-hmm.
And you expect to see after about 3 months on the KnowBe4 program to go from that 30% to about 3% or lower. That's what they're seeing. We saw very similar results to that. So it's a very effective program, and it's all about presenting the material to your users, making sure that it stays top of mind, teaching them what those red flags are that they need to be looking for,
Right.
and then simulating those phishing attempts out to them
Mm-hmm.
on a regular basis so that they get practice, if you will,
Yeah.
to make sure that they're ready when the real thing happens.
Correct. And you always want to be on top of these things because, phishing did go up in the past few years too, if I recall.
Yeah, it was 71% of attacks are going through as phishing attempts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all forms of cyber attacks that are happening. 71% fall into the category of some form of phishing. Now, phishing does go beyond email.
Correct.
There's lots of different ways of doing phishing attacks. They can even do it through text messages, voice phone calls, and if I'm not mistaken, KnowBe4 has recently added that as a possibility that you can actually start phishing your users through SMS and voicemail and things like that. It's not an area we fully explored because we have very few users who actually have company-issued phones.
True.
And you don't expect to be doing company business not on your company phone.
You're not wrong.
But they do come through in those different ways. They come through in just DNS attacks by routing websites, and some of that can be done outside of the email domain. But predominantly it is coming through email, and the amount of spam email, and of course not all spam is phishing,
Mm-hmm.
but the amount of spam email has gone up 2% just in the last 2 years,
Yep.
which when you factor in the millions of emails that are sent, even a 1% jump is enormous.
Oh, yeah.
And the amount of additional emails that are entering into as phishing. 53% of all emails are spam at this point.
Yeah.
And a huge
55.
Yes, 55. It was 53
Yes.
last year.
Yep.
And a huge majority of those, even still, are phishing attempts of trying to get users to provide information that they shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I guess what we're all trying to say is just, even if, just know the social, like the red flags and everything when you look at your email and everything. Like, be vigilant. Like,
Mhm.
don't be lazy. Look at your email. Like, if you're not expecting this email from someone, get rid of it.
Yeah.
It's like, if you know the email's coming in, it's fine. But some people, they don't know how to work their email properly, so you get some odd, funky email. Give them a call and be like, hey, something doesn't look right with this. Like, did you send this, or did you attach something wrong? Just have some communication with that person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just know the signs and be aware of what is happening.
And the KnowBe4 platform is a great platform that we can offer to you to move forward and getting your employees trained, making sure that they're staying up to date on it. And the KnowBe4 platform goes even beyond phishing. It talks about password security. They talk about social media security.
Yeah.
They have an enormous amount of different materials out there that go throughout the whole broad spectrum of cybersecurity. Now, their focus is on phishing,
Right.
as far as their platform.
Yeah.
But their training does extend beyond that. And it's really important that people today also understand the importance of that, because your technology is only as good as it can be. Some things still end up in front of your user, and your user needs to know how to respond to those.
Yeah.
And KnowBe4 does a great job at providing that training platform, keeping it top of mind, keeping it front and center, so that you don't end up being one of those companies that gets exploited that cost you millions of dollars.
Yeah.
I mean, even as a small business, thousands of dollars could hurt significantly. So, our goal is to make sure that all of our clients and every business that is out there is not subjected to these kinds of attacks, or at least know how to handle these kinds of attacks.
Correct.
Because the more we can stop the bad guys in general, the better it becomes for everybody.
Yeah, not wrong. Well, I guess that's about it for today. Thank you for coming on again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only the second episode, but hopefully there's more to come. I believe next week we will be talking about, I myself will be headed over to CES.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous about that.
Sorry. Maybe next year?
Yeah.
I mean, as long as you invite me to the Ignite conference.
Well, we'll get there.
Okay, I see how it is. Anyways, anything, you can, always give us a call, send us an email. Obviously, hop on our social media. I'm always throwing out useful tips each week, and throwing out some random facts about, email security, password, statistics and all that good stuff.
We definitely want it to be helpful.
Yes. Most information will be helpful on there. You'll find some little funny gags, whatever. But we just want everyone to be aware, and, let's come into at least the new year strong and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And, let's not fall into any traps.
Absolutely. And cybersecurity is going to be a big topic.
Yes.
It's an always changing area. It's the fastest growing area.
Very much so. Well, later.